Geb is the ancient Egyptian god of the earth. His name means earth. Geb was often depicted as a man with the earth on his head. He was the consort of the sky goddess Nut. Geb was considered the god of fertility and abundance. He was also the god of agriculture and harvest. In ancient Egyptian mythology, Geb was the brother and husband of Nut. Geb was the parent of Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. His cult was particularly popular in the Nile Delta. In the ancient Egyptian religion, Geb was considered one of the most important gods. Sacrifices were made to him in the hope of a good harvest. Geb was also a patron of land workers. His worship was widespread throughout ancient Egypt. Geb represented the earth as a source of life and abundance. His temples were built in various cities of Egypt. In some myths, Geb is called the Lord of the Earth. Geb was sometimes depicted with a snake, symbolizing his connection to the earth. He protected the land from enemies and disasters. Geb was also associated with the dead and the afterlife. His feast was celebrated in ancient Egypt with a special ceremony. Geb was considered one of the oldest gods in the Egyptian pantheon. His image is often found on the walls of temples and pyramids. Geb was the brother and enemy of his sister Nut. He was part of the 6 creator gods in ancient Egyptian mythology. Geb was a symbol of physical and spiritual fertility. His offerings included land, grain, fruit, and animals. Geb was a patron of children and family well-being. His cult reflected the importance of the land to the ancient Egyptians. Geb was considered the god of the border between earth and heaven. His image was sometimes associated with chirophagia, a symbol of earth and death. Geb was part of the annual Egyptian calendar. Its symbol, the caterpillar, symbolized the life cycle and rebirth. Geb was an imperative god for the pharaohs and rulers of ancient Egypt. His cult has existed for many centuries. Geb was sometimes depicted with horns on his head, symbolizing fertility. His name is often mentioned in ancient Egyptian texts and myths.